Welcome to Motorcar Parts of America's Technical Installation Series. The purpose of this video is to address a starter which has failed due to oil contamination. This issue can apply to various GM vehicles from the late 1990s through 2008 with a 4-cylinder and V6 engines. If the starter has failed and there is evidence of engine oil leaking onto the starter, the oil leaks will need to be repaired. Failure to repair the oil leaks will result in premature failure of the new replacement starter. For this video, we will be removing and replacing a starter on a 2001 Chevy S10 truck. Always wear protective safety clothing and goggles to avoid injury. Also, perform a voltage drop test to rule out other potential problems. Before we begin, make sure the battery is disconnected. Always disconnect the negative battery cable first. A memory saver can be used to keep the radio and other electrical component settings unchanged. Once the battery has been disconnected, we can begin. Let's begin. Step 1. The brace from the engine to the transmission will need to be removed in order to gain access to the starter. There is one 13mm bolt in the back and 2 bolts in the front, a 15mm and a 14mm bolt. Step 2. We then remove the small dust cover that is attached to the transmission housing with 2 10mm bolts. Step 3. Now that the dust cover and brace are removed, remove the 2 15mm starter mounting bolts, a long one and a short one. Step 4. We now have access to the starter solenoid wires. This will require a 15mm socket with an extension to remove the large nut off the battery cable. Step 5. Remove the battery cable, allowing you to tilt the starter up, and with an 8mm nut driver, you can gain access to remove the heat shield and small nut on the solenoid terminal. Step 6. Once the solenoid terminal wire is removed, you can remove the starter through the opening between the engine and the exhaust pipe. Let's install our new starter. Step 7. To reinstall the starter, we first connect the solenoid wire to the starter solenoid using an 8mm nut driver to tighten the nut. Step 8. Position the starter in place and install the 2 mounting bolts by hand to avoid cross-threading. With a torque wrench, tighten the starter mounting bolts to 32 foot-pounds or 43 Newton-meters specifications. Step 9. Connect the battery positive cable to the starter with a lock washer and nut. Step 10. Replace the heat shield by snapping it back onto the starter solenoid. It is extremely important not to forget the heat shield, as it prevents heat from damaging the starter solenoid. Step 11. Now we put the engine to transmission brace back into place. Using a 13mm socket with an extension, we can tighten the bolt from the front. Step 12. Now tighten the 2 front bolts for the engine to transmission brace. One is a 14mm bolt and the other is a 15mm bolt. Step 13. Next, we install the dust cover with 2 small 10mm bolts and tighten them with a small ratchet. The last step is to reinstall the battery. Attach the positive battery cable first and tighten the battery terminal. Repeat this procedure of the negative terminal. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. Remember, when addressing starters that have failed due to oil contamination on various GM vehicles from the late 90s through 2008 with 4-cylinder and V6 engines, the oil leaks will need to be repaired. Failure to repair the oil leaks will result in premature failure of the new replacement starter. If you have questions, contact our Technical Support Center to talk to one of our ASE-certified technicians. Our technicians are available 7 days a week. In the United States, call 800-228-9672, and in Mexico, call 1-800-767-0210. Furthermore, if you have issues that may lead to returning a part, please call our Call Before You Return hotline at 888-933-9065, and our technicians will help troubleshoot the issues you may be having. Powered by MPA.